Good morning, Chamber members. We're following up on our Chamber conversations that we've been doing throughout the pandemic, which is a great way to share with you conversations with people that are influencing our present and will influence our future. And I'm really honored today to have a conversation with Jessie Pippy. Delegate Jessie Pippy is in Annapolis, represents District 4 in our legislative delegation, and serves as the chairman of the Frederick County Legislative Delegation. Delegate Pippy, welcome to Chamber Conversations. Thanks for taking the time with us.
Good morning, and thanks for having me.
So I hope everybody that watches this already knows Jessie, but just in case there's somebody out there living under a rock and you haven't had the opportunity to be exposed to Delegate Pippy, I wanted to talk a little bit first about your past experience, which I think was, was laying the groundwork and paving the way for your present service and hopefully your expanded future service. And that was your role as the chair of the local liquor board. I'm not sure that everybody knows, but that's actually sort of a constitutionally directed role. It's defined in the COMAR. And is a very complicated form of public service. It's one of those rubber meets the road jobs in public service. And so I wanted to ask you, Jessie, about that experience and how that informed you for what it is you're doing now.
Sure. So I had an opportunity to join the Hogan administration early in his tenure after 2014. And there was a position open with the Frederick County Board of Licensed Commissioners, which is locally known as the Liquor Board. And when I read the description of that role, I just thought that was such an interesting and fascinating position. To give you an example, so they're state officials, and they are appointed by the governor to oversee the sale and distribution of alcohol. Now, in Frederick County, we have hundreds of licensees. We have restaurants and we have breweries and distilleries. And, when the Great Frederick Fair wants to serve alcohol, they have to get a license, or the running festival. So this position oversaw tens of thousands of different events and organizations and licensees and citizens. And you get to work with legislators, you get to work with local officials, fire marshals. And I thought, what an important role. And I thought, what a better place to make a difference. As you just mentioned, the Liquor Board has been around for nearly 100 years since Prohibition ended. And a lot of the laws on the books were very archaic, were very old school. And I was proud to be the youngest chairman of a liquor board in the state of Maryland. And I think what I brought to the table was kind of looking at some of these old liquor laws that needed to be updated. I'll give you an example. On Sunday, you couldn't serve alcohol in Frederick County until 11 a.m. And if you were someone that liked to attend brunch, you would go in there and they would have to tell you that you can't get a mimosa until 11, which is ridiculous because most people, would go in at 9 or 10. So we had that law changed. And that it may not be a big deal, but if you are a restaurant in downtown Frederick and you want to get people to come to brunch, that is a big deal. And so we had Cafe Nola testifying. We worked with Brewer's Alley and Isabella's. And so that's what I did. I kind of went through each regulation, each law over and over to make Frederick County more welcoming to businesses. And that's really what kind of got me interested in the General Assembly, because a lot of these decisions have to come from there. So as a regulator, I had to appeal to my delegation to get the laws changed. Now, as a legislator myself, I have an easier way to do, not easier, but I'm there, and I can work with other legislators to continue making Frederick County more business friendly.
Yeah, you've done a fantastic job with that. And I talk to restaurateurs every day. Multiple times a day, it seems lately. And I can't tell you the number of times I've heard that period of time, that couple-year period of time was like revolutionary, not evolutionary in terms of Frederick County and adjusting to the boots on the ground. And I know you were involved in discussions about the off-premise sales during the pandemic, and that's been a lifesaver You talked to Phil Bowers over at Brewers Alley, the ability to be able to convey alcohol products off premise while they're doing curbside food delivery. And I know you played a role in that. How do you feel about the issues with the comptroller? So the General Assembly majority, and I think, just personally speaking, I feel like it's almost all political because logically there isn't a lot of oomph behind their argument. But how do you feel about the idea of taking away from the comptroller his historic role in overseeing alcohol?
Sure. So I actually voted against that law that was passed to essentially, like you mentioned, strip the comptroller of his oversight of alcohol. And I did so because I thought, as it pertained to modernizing the alcohol industry, Francho was doing a good job. I thought that, in Frederick County, Peter Francho is, he's Democrat, which is a lot of Democrat friends, and I'm a Republican, but a lot of people felt that fiscally he was doing a good job. He's a fiscal conservative, and a lot of the breweries and wineries and distilleries liked what he was doing. And I kind of felt, like you mentioned, that the Economic Matters Committee and some of the other folks kind of stripped him of that authority for political reasons. So I didn't support that. I worked with the comptroller's office for years on helping our local breweries and wineries and distilleries, and I didn't think that he deserved to have what happened, what happened. But so we're going to find out what the new setup is, because they're going to create an alcohol and tobacco commission. We'll see how that's run. But, there's things in Annapolis, and Rick, as you would know, that just sometimes things happen in Annapolis that aren't good, and you kind of have to roll with the punches. There's plenty of things that I want to happen that don't happen. There's plenty of things that do happen that I vote against. And at the end of the day, we do our best to make things better for folks back home. But that's one of the things that didn't go the way we wanted.
So I know there are a lot of other things going on that necessarily aren't the way you like. And I thought maybe in a couple minutes we'll talk a little bit about some of these big policy issues. But the sort of the 800-pound gorilla right now is, our economy, nationally, regionally, and here in Maryland, and even down here in Frederick County. What's your take on kind of where we are, what it is you're seeing, both in the current fiscal year and in the year that you'll have to work on starting in January?
I mean, the pandemic has been brutal. There's no question. It's been arguably the most difficult year that I faced, along with all my fellow Marylanders. There's not a person or industry that hasn't been severely impacted by this pandemic. And I would imagine the businesses particularly involved with the chamber downtown Frederick, it's been tough. I mean, it's, we spent the first 4 months of this pandemic fielding thousands and thousands of calls related to folks in unemployment, right? So, I mean, folks applying for unemployment insurance, the Department of Labor was overloaded. They weren't able to deliver everyone relief in a timely manner. And then you had businesses that were just shut down. I mean, I couldn't imagine being a small business person with expenses that don't end and not having any revenue coming in, or not having any customers allowed to come in. And it's just been beyond brutal. And, there's not a day that goes by that I am not constantly reminded about the continual struggle related to this pandemic. And we're nowhere near out of the woods. And so we're going to have to literally put things in overdrive. There's going to be a budget deficit, which will be problematic, because usually in Annapolis there is some money occasionally that can go towards business relief or other programs that can help people. I'm sure there will be less of that. And we're going to have to look at regulation. So you had mentioned the regulation about allowing restaurants to have takeout alcohol. So in Maryland, that was the literally worst thing you could do. In Maryland, for 80 years, they prevented people from having alcohol to go, but we knew the restaurants needed it because a lot of the money that they have comes from alcohol sales. And if they're not allowed to have people sitting in their restaurant drinking or eating, a lot more we're going to go under. So we're going to have to look at other laws like that. to do what we can to make sure that our small businesses can keep going. I happen to believe that the small business is essential to a healthy environment. I am a proud pro-business person. I think that, the entrepreneur that starts a business, create jobs, and the impact that has on all of our communities it's essential. I mean, people don't understand what happens when businesses go under, the trickle effect that has when employees lose their jobs or lose their insurance. They stop spending money. They stop having access to care and other things. I mean, it's a problem. It's a real problem. So we're going to have to get very creative in this upcoming session to do what we can to keep businesses on track and to get them back up and running again.
Yeah, it's going to be a very tough time. And as you start looking forward, I know you're already doing bill research and you're probably working with bill drafters on things that are important to you. What do you see as some of the big policy issues that are going to hit you in committee that you're going to have to deal with on the floor? Any thoughts about those things?
Well, in addition to the pandemic fallout, I'm on the Judiciary Committee, which tends to handle things related to crime and the justice system. So we've had some incidents, some national incidents related to policing. So I will tell you that not directly related to small business, but there's going to be several crime bills that are going to be pushed through trying to reform policing in the country. And look, it's always good to have reform and to make organizations better and to make people better. But we can't do that at the expense of law enforcement. Because I think particularly people in Frederick County, we like a safe community. We value the ability to walk downtown Frederick and be safe, from crime or assault. And that is not a partisan issue. That is something that I think Republicans, Democrats, Independents, we all agree we want to raise our families, and I have 2 small kids, in a safe community. So I'll be fighting to ensure that we can work on meaningful reform, but not at the expense of our law enforcement. But another policy issue that would impact, I think, Frederick County is the Carroll Commission. That's a very expensive program that was enacted. And, when there is a pandemic or a recession or a dip in business activity, we need to be doing the things that spur activity, not hinder activity. And when you are raising the minimum wage, or when you are raising expenses or raising taxes on these businesses that are already struggling, in my view, it doesn't help. We need to be doing the things that makes an entrepreneur want to go out, put some money to work, buy a property, an investment, start a business. And when you add expenses to them, they don't do it. That's what some people in Annapolis don't understand, is that when you want to encourage someone to risk their money to start a business, we need to be helping them, not hurting them. And I will be fighting for those principles down in Annapolis this year as well.
So one of the things that I'm not sure everybody understands is the distinction between serving as the one of the delegates representing District 4, along with Delegates Siliberti and Cox, but also your expanded responsibility in your role as chair of the delegation. It's 8 people with very disparate political views. I mean, you guys sort of run the gamut. And you have a burden. The burden is to make sure that important local legislation makes its way through the General Assembly process in the middle of all of the policy arguments and, passionate ideology, stuff that underlies everything that it is you do. Can you talk a little bit about your role as chair of the delegation and kind of how you navigate that? Because I have to tell you, from 84 miles away, and I still listen to almost every floor session every day on audio, I think you've done a really incredible job, and it's worth describing that a little bit for our viewers.
I appreciate that. So it's It's tricky, and the reason it's more tricky in Frederick is that I think we're the only delegation that is evenly split between Republicans and Democrats. So there are 4 Republicans who represent a conservative district, like myself, and then there are 4 Democrats who represent a more liberal district, District 3, which includes the city of Frederick. And again, I'm not using those connotations for anything negative. It's just that's and they're pretty far separated. And so in order to manage and help each member of the delegation, you have to be open-minded. And like you mentioned, I mean, to be effective in Annapolis, which as a Republican, I'm in the minority party. So the majority party, which the Democrats are in complete control of both chambers in Annapolis. But as delegation chair, my priority shifts from District 4 to District 4 and District 3. And I want to make sure that the projects all throughout the county, even in parts that I don't represent, get funded. I want to make sure the legislation that my colleagues in District 3 and District 4 put through get worked. And I think that's just with any leadership role, you know, you have to kind of look beyond yourself. I was proud to work with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle this past session to bring home projects all over the county. I mean, we had a record amount of projects from the Recovery High School in downtown Frederick to Madigan's Playground to Platoon 22 Veterans Center to Brunswick, where you live, to Middletown. I mean, we brought home a significant amount of projects, and it's only because I think I've built a reputation as being able to work with others across the aisle in Annapolis. You know, there's so much more that we can agree on than disagree on. And I keep saying that. I mean, there are definitely partisan issues. As a conservative Republican, there are some issues that I will not support. Not only because that's the way I feel, but it's the consensus of how my constituents feel. But 80% of the issues, I think most people are nonpartisan. And I mean, if we spent more time focusing on those, you'd be surprised at what we could accomplish. And I felt that bringing home some of the money for the funding was a nonpartisan issue that we could all agree on. We had a great agreement with the Republicans and Democrats. There was some other legislation that we, as a delegation, we put through and got through. And I mean, we need more folks that are willing to work across the aisle now more than ever. And I'm not saying I'm the one. I'm just saying that, you know, if politicians in general would think more about, you know, Marylanders and less about their own political parties, life would be a lot easier. And I think people would be surprised at what we could accomplish on their behalf. And so just, you know, I was given an opportunity for a leadership role, and I hope I did a good job. I hope I was able to help out my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, and I hope I was able to do some good for Frederick County.
So, you know, I was fortunate enough to spend 7.5 years in the environment that you find yourself in, and you wouldn't be surprised to know that I still have lots of friends. Your minority leader, Nick Pippy, is a dear friend. We spent lots of long hours together in the HGO committee hearing room. And Nick has done a great job with thoughtful, you know, not emotional argumentation. Kathy Shaliga she came in after I left, but she's great. She's also a great leader of the minority party. You won't be surprised that from legislative staff, from reporters that are still there and legislators that are still there, you're viewed as the high watermark in terms of what it takes to get things through. Can you talk to us, and maybe just one or two, but some examples of colleagues from the other side of the aisle that you've worked with and found common ground? Because all that does is cement in people's minds what you're talking about in terms of the need to be bipartisan. Give me a couple examples of a
Sure.
Democrat that you found in the House that it's a pleasure to work with.
So absolutely. So I'll give you 3 examples. So actually, a couple days ago, we had three pieces of our legislation take effect. One related to overhauling the gang statute. Another was making strangulation a felony in Maryland, which was a big deal. But there were 3 bills. So last year, we put through the Human Trafficking Reform Act, which was a massive, one of the largest bills related to human trafficking that's ever been enacted in Maryland. And I cross-filed that bill with Senator Lee, who is a state senator from Montgomery County. She's very liberal. And I'm a conservative Republican from Frederick County. And on several issues in Annapolis, we're always on opposing ends, related to, let's say, gun legislation. In my district, we like our Second Amendment. We like hunting and sportsmen's. And in her district, they do not. But on this issue, on human trafficking, making it a crime of violence, we worked together because we both agreed that human trafficking is wrong. It happens in Maryland, and we were going to do something about it. And so what we did is we focused on what we agreed on. We focused on an issue that was important to all Marylanders, and we pushed that through. It took like 10 years for that bill to get through. We did the same with strangulation, which was protecting those from domestic violence. So in Maryland, strangulation was a misdemeanor. In 48 other states, it's a felony, and in Frederick County, we've had a dozen strangulations. One led to death in Middletown a couple months ago. So her and I worked together on making it a felony. And so if you can find issues that are nonpartisan, that you can work with your colleague, you would be shocked at what you can accomplish. I mean, there are so many issues in Maryland, like breweries. That's a nonpartisan issue. We work together to help them out. There are issues in all of our municipalities. And so that's what I focus on. Yes, there will be disagreements with these individuals on certain policies, but on the very next bill, they'll be working with you. And that's the lesson. And Rick, you probably know that from your time in the House. Every day is a different day. Every day there's an opportunity to work on something to make a difference. And that's what I focus on. I don't focus on the negative stuff. I focus on the stuff that we can do together.
Yeah, well, it's working, Jesse. If you'll take just one person's opinion, and I know this is shared throughout the district and this county, but like I said, when I hear from a reporter who works for the Baltimore Sun that the high watermark came from a reporter, that comment about your service. So clearly it's working. You've been recognized by Roll Call as a 100% pro-business legislator. So in the time of pandemic, when our members are desperate to see light at the end of the tunnel, to have a torch carrying member of the delegation, an influential member of the House, get a 100% pro-business score, that's a big deal. The Maryland Retailers Association, one of the largest and most credible trade organizations in Annapolis, gave you an all-star award. I think that's, I know you don't focus on that kind of recognition, but what that tells the businesses that are concerned about what's going to happen is that you're someone that they can trust and count on and depend on to take care of issues that are going to affect them. And you're doing that while you and Lindsay are raising young children. Talk about that for a minute. The challenges of a 90-day session where you're essentially having to be in Annapolis working 10, 12, 14-hour days and raising a young family.
Well, I will tell you, during the 3 months in Annapolis, the burden's on Lindsay, and she does a great job. We have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and it's tough. And for all the working parents out there, like I understand, and I feel the pain and the struggle that this pandemic and just working as a working parent in general. I mean, it's tough. But we're workers. We're going to keep going. We're just going to do our best. But for your business community, for the chamber community out there, I will tell you that when every bill comes to the floor, I have several thoughts. And one of them, if not the first one, is how will this impact small businesses back in Frederick County? And that's kind of like the barometer. Because there are real people with real jobs, real companies, real impact that these bills have. And sometimes in Annapolis, they pass things, you're just shocked. You're shocked that they would even put that into law. And Rick, I mean, so, we're going to continue fighting for the small guy and the small businesses, because that is the heart and soul, in my opinion, of a good community in the state of Maryland. So,
well, listen, it doesn't get any better than that. So on behalf of the 900 and some member businesses and organizations of this chamber, I want to say thank you, Jesse, for your hard work for your thoughtful and intellectual curiosity that you bring to the table every day down there. Keep up the great work. If we can do anything to help you in communicating what it is you're working on and your priorities to our membership, I'm a phone call, email away. And I know you are too, and I know that you respond to every single note that you get, certainly from the county, but people in general. So that's deeply appreciated. So on behalf of everybody, Jesse, thank you very much for this, and we'll get this put up so our members can hear your words and prepare for the work ahead.
Well, Rick, I appreciate the time, and we'll talk to you again. Thank you.
Sounds great. Thanks, Jesse.